Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. So today we are continuing with our series of looks at the Last Jedi novelization by Jason Fry, and we're looking at the reintroduction of Rose into the story, as well as a scene with Poe that kind of explains how things went down with Admiral Holdo and him in that first meeting that didn't go quite as well as maybe it could have. So here's the thing with Rose. When Rose is reintroduced to the story, we find her on the Radis, of course, and we find out that she had been on the Ninka, and she had been on the Ninka watching the Resistance bombers make their run on the First Order dreadnought. So it's from a ready room inside the Ninka that she saw the terrible fate of the Cobalt Squadron Hammer Resistance bomber that Paige Tico was on, that unfortunately went down with the rest of the bombers and the dreadnought itself. After they made the hyperspace jump, that is when she transferred over to the Radis, and so that's how she finds herself there, ready to do basically whatever is needed of her. She's already done the work that she needed to do over on the Ninka, on showing the text there how to do the whole engine baffling situation to mask the emission signatures of those ships, and so now she's over on the Radis. But she's been asked to do a few different things here and there that are kind of below her pay grade, and yet things get a little nutty after the attack by the First Order when they arrive and they start shooting up the place. And there are rumors going around that maybe Leia is dead, that maybe the Resistance is already having surrender talks with the First Order. All of these things haven't made it down to the people behind the pipes and in the trenches, the real stuff that's going on. The fact that Leia is fine and just, in a coma, and of course they're not surrendering, they're just trying to get out of there as fast as they can. And there's also a little tidbit here about the Resistance ring, or the Rebel ring, if you will, the one that looks like a signet ring, and then you push the little lever on the side and it reveals the Rebellion's logo on it. So that was given to Rose by Fossil, who is the commander of the Resistance bomber squadron. She is a martigrade, I believe is the species, a large silver creature for all intents and purposes. And yeah, she obviously survived that. She must have been on the Ninka as well, and she's the one who gave Rose that signet ring. So Rose is pondering it when Finn shows up, and when she sees him, walking away, and sees the back of his jacket, which has the sewn up part from Poe Dameron. And in the novel, her evaluation of it, as written by Jason Fry, is that it looked like it had been done by either a malfunctioning droid or someone whose knowledge of a needle and thread was at best theoretical, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and definitely doesn't speak well to Poe Dameron's sewing abilities. I mean, he did say he wasn't a sewer, but oh boy, he is not a sewer at all, apparently. Meanwhile, we have Poe Dameron going to the meeting on the emergency bridge of the Radis, in case you were wondering where that meeting took place, where they announced that Vice Admiral Holdo is going to be taking over the fleet, and that is Kai Threnali that he is sitting next to. He would be the Abednego that was formerly named in the Lego Force Awakens video game, and was the one that we saw waving as Rey took off at the end of the Force Awakens, who was wearing the Elo Asti costume, but was not Elo Asti, since Elo Asti was killed at the Battle of Starkiller Base. Anyway, as Commander Dacey is talking about the line of succession, Poe has a moment where he thinks, oh my gosh, I might be the one who's promoted here. He has that brief fleeting thought that he is about to be put in charge of the whole Resistance fleet. And so he's not sure whether he's relieved or disappointed when it turns out that Vice Admiral Holdo is the one who's appointed. Though he does reflect through the narrative, as written by Jason Fry, that because Holdo is somebody who Leia has trusted for a very long time, and who is probably the nearest thing that Leia has to a friend in the whole Resistance, Poe actually thinks that he is trying to do the right thing, at least at first, that he wants to be as helpful as possible to Vice Admiral Holdo. So there's no what's the word I'm looking for? The bravado, the arrogance that he comes at Holdo with in the movie. It doesn't necessarily start out that way in his head, at least not the way that Jason Fry writes it. but it does come across that way, and the novel does show that that conversation doesn't go very well, and it goes very much on par with what we see in the movie, as does the exchange with Rose and Finn. That goes about as close to what you saw in the theater as it does in the page or in the audiobook, depending on how you're experiencing it. And as far as the scene on Octo with Luke going into the Falcon, also very similar to what you saw on screen. Nothing really extra there that I caught, though the scene with Chewbacca eating the porg is definitely a little bit longer and gets into Chewbacca's head too about how easy it was for him to capture the porg. And yeah, he is having a bit of a crisis of conscience once all those little porgs are sitting around watching him try to eat one. But the first one that showed up, they have Chewie thinking, oh, maybe I should just snatch this one too. He looks even plumper and meatier than the one I've got on the stick right now. And that is going to do it for the meat of this podcast, with the exception of a little extra thing that I will do over on the audio version. So if you want to check that out, it's at sw7x7.com/iTunes, or whatever podcast app you like. But in the meantime, that's it for this video. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.